Hi, I'm Canapi and this is Manila Storytellers. Most of us would know Binondo as the oldest Chinatown in the world and the source of the best Chinese food in the entire country. Most of us wouldn't really know nor care about the ethnicity of those who make up Binondo. We'd probably package them all as Chinese or Chinoy, which is kind of unfair because um, Binondo is built on the ethnicity of the Chinese who first moved into its environment centuries ago. And a big chunk of that culture, a big chunk of that identity, the Hokkien side of it in particular, is slowly fading away. If not for the efforts of a couple of people, Hokkien culture may have disappeared altogether. Today, we're going to be talking to one of those people who are fighting to keep the Hokkien element of Binondo alive. So, ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce you to Rache Go.
Hi, H.
Hello.
Hello, kamusta na?
Ito, mataba pa rin.
Ay, ako din mataba din. Sobrang hilig. Anyway,
Yeah.
for the sake of our viewers, please introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Rachel, and I'm actually one of the co-founders of Chinoy Heritage Group called Chinoy Life, and also the owner of Kaladkarin Diaries.
Okay. The reason that I'm talking to you now, it's because as part of your efforts dyan sa Chinoy Life at Kaladkarin Diaries, is unwittingly you've also become one of the people who are trying to preserve Hokkien culture. In your case, it's to your tours, it's to research, but more importantly, it's through food. Can you tell people about what you're doing with regards to Hokkien cuisine?
Okay, so just to make it easier and more understandable, basically we do our research for the heritage group so we could share this online to younger generations. And aside from that, we also conduct tours for free. This is just to introduce Hokkien culture to not just the young Chinese Filipinos, but also to non-Chinoys, whether you're a Filipino or you're a foreigner. Aside from this, we also, in my case, in me as a person, aside from the group itself, I focus more on the heritage dishes or heritage recipes, specifically for Hokkien, not Cantonese.
A lot of people are probably not aware of this, but Hokkien culture is a big part of Binondo's history. And right now, it's in danger of fading away. I think it should come from you. Why is it fading away?
To be honest, when we say Binondo kasi, people would actually think of food. And when they think of food, ang unang-unang papasok unang-unang sasabihin nila dyan, noodles. And then siomai. And then siopao. And those things are not necessarily Hokkien, which is kung saan galing most ng ethnic Chinese dito sa Philippines. Those food are called Cantonese food. And in general, when you say Binondo food, karamihan ng restaurants dyan, Cantonese ang sinuserve. And most Filipinos, not just Filipinos, even Chinoys, younger generation Chinoys or foreigners, do not have any idea. Basta sa kanila, pag sinabi Binondo, it's Chinese food. Naka-generalize. But what they do not know is that most of them are Cantonese food and not Hokkien food.
Bakit ba malaking Hokkien population dati ng Binondo? Bakit may significant portion ng Binondo ang Hokkien? Tama ba
It's not just Binondo per se. Kasi from San Nicolas, meron din. Tandaan mo, ang San Nicolas, malapit sa port.
Okay.
Malapit yan dito sa di ba, right now we have Port of Manila. Meron tayong port diyan. When you go back to mga old documents, actually yung Parola area dito sa may Tondo, doon sila bumabagsak. Doon dumarating yung mga ships na merong mga Chinese na dumarating. So, nandun din yung customs nila dun sa mga area na yon before they actually get in. So, San Nicolas area and then the Binondo area have the Chinese. Pero, hindi lang sila concentrated dyan. In other areas, meron din iba. Escolta, meron din. Kalat-kalat naman yan. Now, mostly would actually come from the southern part. Southern part of China. Kasi yun yung malapit sa tubig. Malapit sa port ng Xiamen. So, meron galing Fujian, meron galing Xiamen, meron galing Guangdong. Now, the Cantonese people came from Guangdong. So, kaya nga meron yung mga pansiteria, mga Cantonese yung mga kusinero back then. Now, ethnic Chinese, most of the ethnic Chinese naman na dumating, galing Fujian, mga Hokkien na yon. Pero yung food nila, hindi yan dinadala sa restaurants. It's mostly the country's food. Why? Kasi back then, actually up until now, they think of Hokkien as peasant food. Hindi siya kasing garbo ni Cantonese food. Kapag merong handaan, mas bongga yung itsura ni Cantonese food. And Hokkien food was just the usual staple at home. Na yung mga lola mo sa tuhod na nagluluto, and swerte kung napasa sa nanay mo. And mapasa sa'yo.
Okay, aside from, well, peasant food, how do you describe Hokkien cuisine?
Hokkien cuisine is usually, methods of cooking niya is usually braising. Yun yung number one method na ginagamit nila. It's, syempre, they also use steaming, they also fry, pero braising yung pinaka-signature nila. One example of a Hokkien dish na nag-assimilate na rin dito sa Philippines, kumbaga, in-incorporate na rin niya yung ingredients na available dito sa Philippines is humba. It's originally called hongba for the Chinese. And then, siguro, yun yung naririnig, sounds like hongba, humba.
Okay.
Sinasabi nila. And then, they add different ingredients na.
Okay. Pag sinabi mo kasing humba, ang image ko ng humba basta parang sticky sweet pork na may pineapples, yun ang pumapasok sa utak ko eh. How close or how far is that from the original humba?
Hongba. Okay. The original hongba is also sticky. Ang component niya is salty, a little bit sour, and sweet. Yun yung three major components nun. Now, for the humba that we have in the Philippines, maraming variations yan, especially the one in Cebu. Maraming variations yan. Some families would actually use pineapple to sweeten it. Some would use bananas, actually.
Oh, okay.
To sweeten it. Tapos gumagamit na sila ng banana blossoms. Kung hindi bananas, banana blossom. Para mabango. So nagkakaroon na siya ng variation. Pero yung original nun, as in, ano lang siya, yung iba toyo, yung iba nilalagyan ng tausi. Tapos may asukal to make it sweet. Tapos may pampaasim lang ng kaunti. Pero minimal. It's mostly salty, a little bit sour and sweet. Pero Filipino side, mas nangingibabaw si alat. Alat, tamis. Parang isipin mo parang adobo. Medyo adobo na siya pero merong banana blossom or may pineapple for others. Depende kung ano yung availability dun sa area na yun.
Okay.
So basically, the Hokkien food that we have here in Manila cannot be compared to Hokkien food in China anymore.
Okay.
It cannot be compared to Singapore's Hokkien food or even Malaysia's Hokkien version. Why? Kasi each of these countries, kung sino yung mga dumating doon, ini-incorporate na rin nila yung recipe na meron sila to one. Kung ano yung available ingredients ang meron. Second, kung ano yung panlasa nung nakakarami doon. Remember, our ancestors came here. Some actually had marriages with the mestizos or the Filipinos. So, syempre, kailangan angkop dun sa panlasa nung kasama mo. So, may adjustments na nangyayari.
Okay, aside from humba, are there any other Hokkien dishes that made it to the general Filipino cuisine?
Actually, medyo marami. Aside from humba, well, as you all know, are we talking about just Hokkien or pati Cantonese?
Hokkien muna.
Hokkien muna. Okay. For, you have heard of, di ba? Soup number 5.
Yes. Wait.
Yes. We also,
Oh. Okay. Ang soup number 5 ay Hokkien?
meron din. May version ang Hokkien ng soup number 5 and we call it gokong. One restaurant actually caters that dish, Cafe Mezzanine. And Cafe Mezzanine, and then yun nandun sa ground floor niya, si Chuanki. Meron sila nun. Usually, they said na pampalakas siya ng katawan, aphrodisiac. So, may similarities. Meron version.
Is kiampong also Hokkien cuisine?
Yes, kiampong is a Hokkien dish. Basically, from the translation, kiam is maalat, and then pong is rice. So basically, it's instead of steamed rice, na kailangan mo pa ng ulam, yan, all-in-one na. Meron ka ng, it's brown because of the soy sauce. Meron na siyang lasa, and then may bits ng meat. Some, kapag pag sinuserve siya, may nuts, may peanuts. Pero in every family, iba-iba rin na recipe. Like for example, sa family ko, hindi kami nagkikater lang dun sa baboy. Hindi lang baboy yung Pag special occasions, we use eel. For other families, minsan yung iba, heavy. Basta may kanya-kanya silang diskarte dun sa recipes nila. Kumaga may ordinary days and then may special days.
Okay.
Na version.
Ang dating sa akin ng Hokkien cuisine, parang may parallelisms with general Filipino cuisine in that wala talagang nakalock na standards or nakalock na recipes dito. Each recipe ay depende dun sa household. Tama ba yung assumption ko regarding that?
Yes.
So which means that it's hard to standardize a typical recipe because iba-iba yung recipes depende sa mga pamilya. Yikes.
Yes. Aside doon, parang di ba, meron tayo sa mga comedies on TV, di ba, meron, wala ka sa lolo ko. Ganon din sa amin. Siyempre, love your own. Kung ano yung nakasanayan mong kainin growing up, yun yung masarap sa'yo. Yun yung identifier mo sa utak mo na ito yung benchmark, ito yung lasa. So kahit saan kang household magpunta or restaurant, meron kang pinagkukumperan. And each family has their own. Siyempre, iba-ibang panlasa. Lalo na kung galing pang ibang probinsya. So, doon na magkakatalo. Another thing is, walang standardized. Bakit? May ugali din kasi yung mga ancestors before. Papatayin ako ng kamag-anak ko pag napanood nila to. Pero, for example, sa lola ko, she would be able to give you the recipe. Pero may kulang. Imaginein mo kung kada generation lagi may kulang. Hindi mo siya mapaperfect. Not unless ikaw mismo yung mag-practice on your own and hanapin mo kung ano yung nawawala. Sometimes, mas napapaganda kasi you get to incorporate a new ingredient na mas masarap. Yung iba, nakukuha mo yung eksakto. Pero minsan, they don't really tell you or they give you all the ingredients pero yung technique on how to do it, they won't tell you.
So how did you come to know Hokkien cuisine? I assume that this is something that you grew up with.
In our family, puro mga kusinera yan. Lahat. Sa father's side ko. So, I could still remember when I was a kid, lahat yan, pagka meron kaming may special occasion, magluluto yung lola ko, one-woman show yan. As in, she would actually cook 10, 12 dishes on her own. Na ang dami per dish, kalahating drum. Alam mo yung malalaking kawali, malalaking kaldero. She would actually cook that way. Kilala siya dun sa, we used to live in Pasay. So kilala siya nun, lalo na nung mga matatanda. Kapag sinabing nagluluto siya, lahat yan, kahit mayaman pa yan, they're willing to actually sit down without a table and eat with holding their plate. Basta siya yung nagluto. Ang gagawin niya, yung mga auntie ko, mama ko, wala silang papupuntahin sa kusina. Patutulungin niya, magbabalat kayo, maggagayat kayo, doon kayo, but no one steps inside the kitchen. it was just me and my younger sister. Kaming dalawa kasi yung bata dun sa that time. So, madalas kami yung pakalat-kalat sa kusina. Kami lang yung hindi namumura para lumayas doon. So, yung isang kapatid ko, pupwesto sa tabi niya. Ako, pupwesto doon sa may kabilang side. So, kahit anong tago niya, nakikita namin. So, kami lang yung allowed na umupurun sa lababo, pinapanood. But then, even if you ask her, she's not gonna tell you. Usually, yan lagi niyang sinasabi, pay attention. So, tignan mo kung paano niya ginagawa. She doesn't use any measurements. As in yung typical na kamay. Tapos titikman. It's more of, habang lumalaki kami, doon namin na-realize na it's more of the technique. She can give you the recipe. Kaya mong habulin yun. Pero if you don't know how to actually do it, you're not going to get it. So basically, ganun kami natuto. And then, practice din sa bahay.
I think one thing na, yun, okay, balikan lang natin yung isang point na a lot of Filipinos are not aware of the extensive Hokkien influence that used to be in Binondo, and it's fading away. Why is it so important? Actually, it feels really silly to ask the question that way, but I think I need to ask it to get the conversation going. Why is it important to hold on to aspects of Hokkien culture?
Okay. It's good that you asked that. For example, I'm almost 40. I'm 39 this year. And people who are younger than me, yung mga younger generation na sa akin, most of them can't even speak in Hokkien. Yung iba nakakaintindi, pero yung mabababaw lang. Pero hindi na makakasagot sa'yo. Sasagutin ka Tagalog. Pero yung much younger, as in talagang clueless na kung ano sinasabi mo. Minumura mo na sila in Hokkien, nakatanga lang sa'yo. And then, alam mo yun, as in, oblivious sa sinasabi mo. I know you would tell me na maraming Chinese schools. Dapat alam nila yan. But just to let you know, Hokkien is not really taught in school. Before, noong time ko, expected na kasi na sa bahay namin, kinakausap kami while growing up, habang maliit ka pa. So, parang naging method of instruction si Hokkien while they teach Mandarin during Chinese classes. Pero now, when I ask my kids, they don't have Hokkien as a medium of instruction. As in, they get taught Mandarin all the way. That's why mas prefer nila na parang nursery ka pa lang, nag-aaral ka na ng Chinese. Not unless you're studying in a learning center or parang foreign language based yung instructions or explanations will be done in English and then they teach you the Mandarin equivalent. Pero for Hokkien, it's actually a dying language as well. So it's not just the culture, it's not just the food that's dying, it's also the language itself. Kasi Hokkien doesn't have, it's not written. Okay. It doesn't have a written counterpart. We can actually read the Mandarin.
Yes.
Pero Hokkien doesn't necessarily have a Mandarin equivalent sa salita. So there are some words na parang ginagamitan na lang ng sounds like or kung ano yung pinakamalapit na term na pwedeng gamitin. But Hokkien is not a language na merong written counterpart. It's something spoken. And not many people are using it anymore.
Ang impression ko ngayon sa Hokkien culture, it's a culture that parang nabuhay sa oral tradition, just languages being passed on to usage, recipes passed down to learning one way or the other. It's not a culture that writes down anything ba? Parang ganun yung impression sa akin. It's a culture that just exists. And now because there's not a habit of writing everything down, that's also why it's fading. Tama ba impression ko regarding that?
It's really not written down. Kumbaga walang written equivalent. Kumbaga nagsasalita lang ang tao. Some people try to romanize it para ma-pass on sa younger generation. And one of them, believe it or not, is Vicente Lim. Yung nasa 1,000 peso bill natin. He tried. I actually had the book. It was known to me by Mr. Hokkien C. And then I saw the romanization, pero hindi siya, alam mo yun, hindi nagtuloy-tuloy. Maraming nag-try, pero it's a bit difficult. Kasi hindi siya pareho na Mandarin na may 4 tones.
Okay.
Sa kanya, parang 8 or 9 tones siya. So it's much difficult. Some of the founders ng group namin, we're trying to decipher it. Dumating din kami sa point na nagkagulo kami because of it. Kasi talagang gano'n siya ka-complex. And it's really hard. So, pinaka-option na lang namin is try to save it. Sometimes we do have mga activities for language, for this, pero it's not enough. Iba pa rin kasi yung sa household, sa bahay talaga. And to be honest, a lot of Chinese Filipinos do not use the language anymore. They would prefer Tagalog or English or Mandarin most of the time. Magagamit mo na lang yata yung Hokkien or iniisip na lang nila, magagamit na lang nila ang Hokkien if they're doing business around here in Binondo. But some do not really see the importance anymore.
Sayang naman pag nag-fade out yan. Kasi, I mean, that language is part of a bigger sphere of influence na unti-unti nawawala kasi the modern times are leaving. It's really, it's actually very concerning that nandito na, and it's just fading away. So you mentioned you do activities to hold on to certain aspects of the culture. Like what activities have you guys done?
Okay, for Chinoy Life, aside from the tours that we do, we actually do the San Nicolas tours. We also did some food tours. And then last year, for the Chinese New Year, we actually had a Chinese New Year feast wherein we introduced 10 dishes, lahat Hokkien, walang Cantonese. So it was like a sit-down lunch. And then participants would be enjoying the lunch na Hokkien, as in talagang Hokkien feast. Food na hindi mo na mahahanap sa restaurants. So it was cooked by me, and then yung mga participants namin, they actually had a sit down, and then while they were eating, we were giving them yung history ng food, kung bakit, ano yung reasons why they were being served, ano yung significance and all. Kumbaga, something new na hindi mo makukuha basta-basta. And then we made sure na by the time we go home, meron kang natutunan ng something new. Aside from that, we also had our Chinatown challenge wherein we had participants and then grouped them into teams. So I think that time we had about 48 participants. So para siyang Amazing Race. We started at Escolta. And then, meron silang map, meron silang challenges, and all of the challenges had something to do with Hokkien culture. So, kumaga, what you're having a race, you're enjoying, you're having fun, you're running around, you eat, you learn something new, you actually engage in the activity as well. So, hindi lang yun para sa Chinoy. Most of the participants that we had were Filipinos, some foreigners as well. So, parang, you're not just reading about it. You're not just being told about it, and you're not just listening. Kumaga, ginagawa mo siya. Kinakain mo siya, ginagawa mo siya, naaamoy mo siya. Lahat. So at the end of the day, pagod ka, busog ka, and then you have an idea what the culture is about. And then we also had language activities. So meron kaming Hokkien for dummies. Pardon the word, pero it's Hokkien 101. So this was actually done para sa mga, as in zero knowledge about Hokkien. Walang alam na Hokkien word. So most of actually lahat ng participants namin, about 90% were Filipinos and then 10% foreigners. So to learn the language. Kumaga, at the end of the session, you get to count, you get to know a few phrases, parang introduction na for you for Hokkien, and then meron din kaming advance. But lately during the quarantine, syempre wala muna.
Okay, so you mentioned earlier that there are only a few restaurants in Binondo that actually serve Hokkien cuisine. Could you name the restaurants that do so?
Um, for the Hokkien dishes that's being served in Binondo, there's cafe mezzanine.
Okay.
Tuan Ki is also serving Hokkien food. I would highly recommend the Kiampong. And then go for the Gokong, which is the bull's testicles. And then the Ngohyong. And then Awis Cafe. Nasa may Yuchenko lang siya. Malapit din lang sa Cafe Mezzanine. Awis Cafe actually serves Hokkien food and a little bit of Cantonese. Pero mas homey yung menu niya when it comes to the Hokkien food. Aside doon, you could also try Salazar Bakery when it comes to yung mga baked goods naman niya. And bitin, syempre yung hopya. Walang kamatayang hopya, nandoon din. And then, when you go to Poland, that's in Yuchenko Corner, Carvajal. They have their matjang. Which is different from Cantonese matjang. Okay. Cantonese kasi medyo rectangular siya. Mas masarap ang sa Hokkien kahit anong sabihin nila. And then...
Teka, ito ba yung matchang na pa-triangle o iba pa yun?
Yes. Oo. Pero careful kasi meron mga matjang na pa-triangle din pero hindi pare-pareho ang filling sa loob. Meron yung iba pork, yung iba chicken, yung iba beans lang. Meron yung iba yung parang ano lang siya.
So yung Hokkien version ng matjang, ano siya?
I have a photo that you can actually show them. Usually pork siya. Pero pag sinabing taochang, yun yung beans. Para dun sa mga takot sa cholesterol.
Sa San Nicolas naman, 'di ba may mga ibang may ilang-ilang, 'di ba?
Yes, for San Nicolas, don't get me wrong ha. For San Nicolas kasi hindi naman siya kilala as all Chinese ever since. It's cosmopolitan kasi area yan ng back then area yan ng mga mestizos, ng mga Filipinos, and there are other Chinese. Pero right now kasi concentrated siya as warehouse na area with all of the old houses na isa-isa na nagigiba. But there is one particular restaurant na 100 years na nandun. But initially, they started as a catering company. Wala silang pwesto. Catering lang sila until the 1940s. Doon sila nag-start na magtayo ng restaurant. But they specialize in Hokkien cuisine. Hokkien talaga yung food nila. And if you go there, ang sasuggest kong i-order nyo doon, yung chicken rice wine. You have tasted that chicken rice wine.
I have tasted the chicken rice wine. Gusto ko siyang ulitin. Actually,
chicken rice wine is good.
Kaya doon ako nababaliw eh. Pag sinasabi yung the impression on Hokkien cuisine is peasant food, pangbahay lang, standard. And yet, yung kinain ko sa ilang-ilang, sumabog ang utak ko sa sarap eh. So, anong peasant food?
Kasi,
anong pinagsasabi mo dyan? Ang sarap kaya?
Ay nako, marami na ako nakaaway dyan. Hindi, they call it a peasant. They call it peasant food. Kasi usually, kapag sinuserve siya, walang kabongga-bongga na itsura. Kumbaga parang as is na siya. Hindi katulad ng Cantonese food. Ano mo yun? Fully decorated, which is why when I do my cooking, I try to, di ba, minsan nagagalit kayo sa akin when I keep posting food. Kasi for me, hindi lang siya enough na... Kasi for me, hindi lang siya enough na laman dyan. Kailangan you eat it with ice din. Yun yung pumasok sa utak ko when someone told me that Hokkien food was peasant food. Kumbaga parang for me, kailangan siya ma-elevate. Kasi aside from the fact na kukunti na lang yung may alam ng mga recipes, yung mga heirloom recipes na yan, nawamatay na siya, nilalait pa siya. So, for me, parang sa akin, inisip ko na lang na parang it's my job since I cook. And I take photos, and I do my research, and then I try to share Hokkien tradition. So, why not elevate it? So, kahit na ang daming haters na sasabing stop posting food kasi pandemic, kasi salbahe daw ako. I still post them. Kasi it's my way of trying to share what Hokkien food is all about.
Ako personally, nagagalit ako pag nagpa-post ka ng food kasi hindi ko natitikman. Ako yun lang naman. Dead man na sa pandemic. Kanya-kanyang
Ay,
kanya-kanyang
pinadalang
pakopop
kita
yan.
nun
Oo naman, Diyos ko, at for
Pinadalang
which,
kita.
nagpasalamat naman ako ng bongga. At may kapalit yun. Hindi natin pwede sabihin kung ano yung kapalit kasi bawal noon.
Bawal noon, noong time na yun.
Bawal noon. Anyway, as it is, we have as far as Hokkien culture is concerned, you have a language that does not have a written component. You have a cuisine na hindi standardized at saka nagdidepende from household to household.
And ito yung pinakamasakit.
Oh.
Ito pa yung pinakamasakit. Yung mga may alam ng mga heirloom recipes, kadalasan, hindi na yung family mismo. Lalo na kapag medyo well-off yung family, ang nakakaalam is yung mga kusinera. Kasi hindi marunong magluto yung iba. For those na kahit na may kaya or mayaman, pero buhay pa yung mga lola, sila yung, alam mo yun, the maids would probably do the dirty work, yung magbalat, maghiwa, pero siya talaga yung nagluluto. Pero usually when it gets passed to the daughter or to the granddaughter, meron yung iba, hindi interesado, not unless they love cooking. Yan, okay yan. Makukuha nila. But most of the time, those who do not have the time or just plain takot matalsikan ng ng mantika, ng ganyan, they would actually depend on the kusineras. So it's the kusineras who actually get the heirloom recipes. Binabaliwala lang ng family. Basta pagluto mo, tapos. Yun yung masakit doon.
So yun yung state ng cuisine, aside from the language, tapos may mga practices pa nga na hindi na masyadong nasusustain kasi nga nag-fade na unti-unti nawawala yung mga experts at may mga gatekeepers. So I think you also have a version of the Peking opera. Di ba dati? May parang some sort of Chinese theater. What is that exactly?
Yes. We call that kauka.
Kauka. Okay.
Kauka. Right now, isa na lang meron tayo rito sa Philippines. And hindi pa sila ganun ka-visible. Usually, pinapatawag lang sila kapag ghost festival or kapag mag-perform sa temple, but not very often. And the sad thing is, isa na lang, yung nag-head ngayon, siya na lang yung mag-isa. And then yung troupe niya is consisting of Filipinos. Wala namang problema doon. But the thing is, yung mga Chinoy, hindi na rin interesado. Second, magtataka ka, since everything is actually said in Hokkien, memoryado na lang nila. Hindi nila naiintindihan yung sinasabi. They memorize lang lahat. So aside dun sa blocking nila, kung paano nila gawin yung sword fights, yung paikot-ikot nila sa stage, everything is just memorized. Wala na yung essence ng mismong nung mga dialogue sila doon kasi they don't understand. So pag nawala yung nagli-lead dun sa troupe na yon, I don't know if there's gonna be anyone else.
Does this tradition still have its roots from China? Or is it one of those na naman na nung dinala dito sa Pilipinas, nag-iba siya, nag-mutate siya into something else entirely? Is it one of those things na naman?
Some of them are, but you also have to remember na most of the ancestors, most of the ethnic Chinese that came here is yung prior to the war. Like for example, yung lolo ko sa tuhod nung dumating sila rito. This was prior to Mao coming in before the country became communist and all. So, yung mga ancestors na dumating dito, mga conservative yun. Yun yung dala-dala nila na traditions and cultures na slowly fading away. And then when the war came, then dumating na si Mao nung communist era, naputol yung communication ng mga ethnic Chinese dito and their relatives back in China. So as in putol. Now, nung naputol sila, wala nang communication, no nothing. Kasi before, natatandaan ko pa noon yung lola ko sa tuhod. Sabi, nagpapadala pa ng pera sa China. Sabi ko, and then, bakit nagpapadala? Kasi meron pang kamag-anak. Kumbaga, they sent out the men to Manila or to Hong Kong for a better life. And then, in return, what you do is you send money para naman doon sa mga kamag-anak mo in China. So, pagdating doon, kung sino man yung broker nila na magdadala ng pera, ibibili na yun ng bigas, kung ano yung necessities na kailangan nila doon. This is for the poor ones. Kasama yung pamilya ko doon. And then after no, naputol. Or usually napuputol yan kapag namatay na yung pinakamatanda. Pag wala nang gusto magtuloy. Kaya after maputol yan, syempre, yung mga taga-China ngayon, mga mainlander na dumarating ngayon dito, they think of the ethnic Chinese here as conservative. Sa kanila kasi medyo ano na sila, liberated na sila. Tayo, yung mga nandito naman kami, parang iniisip na masyadong conservative. Even the way we speak in Chinese, masyado raw traditional. Kasi sa kanila, iba na yung pananalita eh. Iba na. Sa amin, ang naiwan sa amin is kung ano yung tinuturo ng mga lolo-lola, which is on the conservative side. Sila nag-iba na. So, merong gap.
So, with regards to keeping this aspect of Binondo's history alive, makakatulong ba, for example, a facility like a museum dedicated to Hokkien culture? Makakatulong ba something like that dun sa
Yes, as a matter
goals?
Totoo. Kasi right now we have one which is in Intramuros, located inside Intramuros. It's called Bahay Chinoy. Basically, that particular museum shows kung ano yung ethnic Chinese. Meron ka makikita mga may museum siya sa baba, and then doon sa second floor may mga old photos, meron ka makikita yung mga na-excavate na mga potteries. Pero yung pinaka magandang tingnan doon is yung ginawa nila para mga models. It would actually showcase kung paano nag-assimilate ang mga Chinese dito since the 9th century. Nung dumating sila dito yung nag-trade for trading, kung ano yung tinitrade, and then kung ano yung naging life hanggang sa 1800s, and then to the present. Memorabilia are kept there. Most of the questions that you would have in general would be found there. They also have a library doon sa second floor. And then sa third floor, meron din siya mga memorabilia, pero more on the 80s na. 80s, 90s. Kung ano yung natulong nung heritage namin na Chinese Filipinos sa Filipinos na rin. So makikita mo doon yung as the centuries turn, makikita mo yung difference. And I would honestly like to invite a lot of people, especially kahit na yung mga Chinoy sa walang idea sa heritage, yun yung pinaka best place to go to learn about the culture itself, na hindi Chinese but Chinese Filipino. What makes us different from the Chinese and then from Filipinos as well, kung ano yung mismong kultura.
I need to ask kasi di ba may nagbukas na din na Chinatown Museum sa may tawag dito, sa may Lucky Chinatown Plaza. Ang impression ko sa Chinatown Museum, it's similar to Bahay Chinoy, pero mas Instagrammable. Other than that, may major differences pa between both museums. Both of them are awesome, by the way. Wala akong sinasabi that one is more superior to the other. Pero, anong difference ng Chinatown Museum sa Bahay Chinoy?
Siguro ganito, totoo, kahit naman ako, hindi ko po pwede sabihin na mas okay to. Pero, between the two kasi, let's just, for me sa akin, ang dating kasi sa akin, parang, ang pangit naman na ang museum wala sa mismong Chinatown area. So, one good thing, nandun siya sa loob ng mall, that's one. Second, parang isipin mo na lang na, aside sa Instagrammable siya, mas nakaka-relate siya sa younger generations right now. Third, yung area naman kasi, na-consult din naman yan sa Bahay Chinoy. So, there's no conflict between the two. Ang pinaka nitong dalawang lugar na to is to actually share Chinoy heritage is. Walang competition between the two.
Yeah. And ako, for me, brilliant yung Chinatown Museum. It hits all the good points. And honestly, no offense sa Bahay Chinoy, mas mas friendly siyang tignan. Medyo madilim ang Bahay Chinoy eh. Medyo
Kasi
creepy.
syempre, hindi naman. Pero you have to understand na syempre, it takes money to actually maintain. From the kuryente, from, ano mo yun, yung maintenance ng Bahay Chinoy. And Bahay Chinoy actually runs, hindi naman yan, sabi mo, meron permanent, volunteerism yan eh. But let's just say na parang portable version, yun nandito sa Lucky Chinatown. Kumbaga, if you want to get a bigger dose of the heritage, it would be best to go to Bahay Chinoy. Pero going to both places would be highly recommendable. Kumbaga, if you want to get a small dose of heritage from a Chinoy heritage, mas maganda dito sa may Lucky Chinatown if hindi ka takot sa traffic. Tsaka wala kang problema hindi ka naman problema sa parking space, di ba? Yung tipong maglalakad ka, mag-grab ka lang. Okay, fine. Ganon. Tapos mag-shopping ka sa baba. Pero maganda siya, stepping stone, para hindi parang overwhelming. Pero once you want more or gusto mo mas maintindihan pa, pinaka-best doon talaga sa kabila.
Yun ang experience ko eh. Kasi ang inuna ko ay Bahay Chinoy. Kasi doon, pumunta ako ng Bahay Chinoy, hindi pa bukas ang Chinatown Museum. Medyo, especially for somebody who's uninitiated, na talagang medyo kumampas yung amount of information doon. And I'm pretty sure hindi ko na-absorb lahat. Yung major beats lang. Yung the culture ng dati, yung contribution ng Chinese mestizo sa Philippine history, yung stalwarts of the modern era, yung mga ganun na gets ko. But feeling ko ang dami kong hindi na-observe kasi possibly kasi parang unfamiliar eyes. Tapos lahat yung humampas ko, ano lang makuha ko, yun ang ina-observe ko. Tama ka eh. Parang small dose of it eh. Which, honestly, both of them are very nice eh. Tama ka. At to be recommended.
It's a small dose, pero once you get the feel of it, once pumasok ka doon naman sa kabila, mas mabilis yung pag-intindi mo. Kaya sa akin, both are good. Mas maganda silang parehong puntahan. Kumaga, para hindi rin lang overwhelming yung sa Bahay Chinoy. Kasi gaya nga ng sabi mo, di ba parang ganun yung dating. Pero yun sa kabila, syempre, yun nga, aside sa the fact na Instagrammable siya, yun nga, kumaga, marami ka makukuha na details kasi consulted naman yan with Bahay Chinoy, and then most of the research naman ginawa din dun sa kabila. So, alam mo yun, imposibleng hindi magtugma yung mga details.
With regards naman to the cuisine, now, given the nature of the cuisine na hindi siya standardized, so may mga kanya-kanyang take yan dito. What could we do? What specific steps can people do to be able to protect it and prevent it from dying out or fading away?
One, support the restaurants that actually serve them. That's one. Two, if this is going to be for Chinoys, especially for the younger generation, if you still have your amas or taimas, ama is your grandmother or taima, great-grandmother, with you, and then they cook. Try to spend some time with them. Try to learn the dishes that they prepare. Kasi yun yung mga heirloom recipes. Actually, for example, in my case, our grandmother's Hokkien recipes are my family's legacy. So whatever I lack information from my family, when it comes to family history, nakukompleto naman siya nung heirloom recipes. Kasi parang yun yung kumukompleto. Medyo minsan nakakakuha ka ng idea, ganun pala yun. Na hindi mo naiintindihan. So, part yan. And then once na maputol yan, wala na. So, if you can actually, kahit sa aunties minsan napapasa sa aunties, if you know anyone in your family, try to write it down. You don't necessarily have to post them, but try to write it down. Kasi it's a good thing to pass to the next generation. Kasi aside from customs and tradition, legacy yan ng family nyo. Parang usual legacy na hindi napapansin or tinitake for granted. But it's something worth keeping.
Is there anything else that you'd like to add to the conversation?
Yeah. One of the members in our heritage group, Chinoy Life, is what we call a relative finder. His name is Eduardo de la Cruz. He's half Filipino and half Chinese. And then his journey, he also is a contributor for Bahay Chinoy. We called him the relative finder because on his free time, he usually helps out either the Chinese in China or Filipino Chinese here or even Filipinos na nagtatry mag-trace ng family nila back in China or vice versa. So basically, we try to help him out. If he informs us na I'm looking for relatives ng ganitong person, usually we only have a photo and a name. And then on our end, we try to search. It's either we share the photo, depende kung anong meron kami. And then we try to find the missing relatives, either from China or from Manila. So just for us to be able to locate. And then once na nahanap niya, may database siya na per village, nandito yung mga family associations, try and reconnect. That's actually one of the activities that we have. If you actually go to Bahay Chinoy, they have this parang newsletter that you can get for free, and you can actually read about his work there as well. Kasi for us, lagi namin siyang, if we can help him out, we do. Kasi hindi biro yung ginagawa niya in tracing the families. Kasi lalo na kapag minsan ang meron lang sila is just an old photo and an old name. Usually from letters na, yung mga last letter na na-receive before communication was cut out, ganon, pinapahanap kasi mamamatay na yung isang relative. So, medyo we try to help him out with his efforts kasi medyo mahirap din mag-translate, especially when you're talking to someone from in a different country with minimal resources.
Okay, just to wrap things up, what's your dream for Hokkien culture in the future of Binondo? What would you want to happen? What would be the dream scenario for you with regards to Hokkien culture?
Sa akin, simple lang. If we could have more activities, especially, for example, pagka Chinese New Year, instead of just having, the usual, kasi ang happenings dito kapag Chinese New Year sa Binondo is you just have the lion dance, yung dragon dance, tapos paparada na yung kung sinong mayor. Well, last time na nakita ko was Erap. And then, concert na pagdating sa gabi. Instead of having those, bakit hindi na lang magkaroon ng parang, anyway, showcase the ethnic Chinese community ko, ano meron, aside doon sa Mr. and Miss Chinatown. Yung have activities na familiar doon yung kumbaga sa more of the Chinese Filipino heritage ang meron. Para merong na-impart na knowledge na you're not just celebrating yung Chinese New Year per se, but kasi ngayon may makikita mo na lang merong nakikita ko aside sa lion dance, sa dragon dance, may pakalat-kalat na mga naka-Star Wars. Minsan merong, hindi ko alam kung parang nagko-costume na sila na wala ng relation dun sa activity yung sineselebrate. So, siguro sa akin, if it's just one day lang naman, siguro mas, lumabas yung culture itself. Hindi yung parang tinapon lang na halo-halo, tapos gulo-gulo, hindi marami lang tao. Parang gano'n. It's more of understanding kung ano yung culture. Not just, Chinese culture per se. Kasi right now, when people see you na maputi, singkit, Chinese ka na agad. Kumbaga, nakalagay ka na sa isang bowl, not really realizing na the mainlanders are different from the ethnic Chinese. May difference yan eh. I am not alienating the mainlanders. I am not saying na mas okay, mas magagalingan ang Chinese Filipinos, but there is a difference. It's like the Visayans being compared to parang nilalump together mo yung mga taga Mindanao at mga taga Bisaya just because they're not from Manila. Do you get my point?
Yes.
So, since we have certain dates, like for example, the Chinese New Year, so it would be best na instead na going to mag-held ka ng concert dyan, try to magkaroon sana ng initiative to like the local government na ang i-highlight is yung festivities of the Chinese Filipinos, not the ati-atihan, not the kasi may mga certain para hindi pumapasok, hindi nagja-jive. Yung parang naging halo-halo na lang na basta may festivities yun, sugod tayo doon. Parang gano'n.
Okay.
So, let's just sana mas ma-highlight yun para makita rin ng tao, they learn something na hindi pare-pareho, na hindi porket singkit, hindi porket nagsasalita ng Chinese, they belong in singkit. Kasi, like, for us, if you ask us, we're not gonna say na, pag tinanong, ano ka, Chinese ka ba o Filipino ka? Well, technically, initially, ang sasagot namin sa'yo, Filipinos kami. Kasi we were already born here and ang hawak kong passport, Philippine passport. Hindi naman Chinese passport. But if you ask my ethnicity, sasabihin ko Chinese Filipino because that's what I am. Minsan kasi medyo nakakainis lang kapag, and it happened to me so many times.
I'm sure.
Na ay, Chinese ka kasi singkit ka hindi ka naman Pilipino eh. Parang ganon. Hello, mas diretso pa ako mag-Tagalog.
Oy, nako. Parang tanga lang yung mga ganun comment. Parang sapsapain ko minsan.
Minsan, pero we have to think them kasi na, yun nga, nalagay na tayo sa isang na-generalize na eh. So, it would be best na to educate everyone about it para maiwasan yun.
Well, thank you very much for sharing your stories with us, H. Sure, madaming napulot yung mga nanonood nito dun sa mga kwento mo. Maraming salamat.
Thank you then for the time.
Well, anyway, thank you very much for watching Manila Storytellers. Do follow our social media accounts coming up right now. Also, do follow the Facebook page of WanderManila, our technical partner for Manila Stories. Okay. And if you know anybody who has a story to tell, who is keeping the passions of their city alive by what they do, we would love to talk to them. Please email us at this or send us a message on our social media accounts. So once again, this has been Canapi and this has been Manila Storytellers.